What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 105. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me under to the machine at Armando underscore Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. As usual, before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the content, join what we talk about here. Make sure you like, follow, rate, and review the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. Remember, you can now find the show on YouTube. And any questions, any topics you want us to discuss, anything you want us to talk about here, email those to mindofmarsal@gmail.com, and we will talk about that here. Well, Tyler, you're on with me again, baby, and we are talking NFC North. We've been doing the team previews now. We've been going, division by division, and so far, so fun, man. And in addition to that, we got our NFL draft guide up on the site. So lots to talk about here today. But before jumping into everything, how you doing, bro?
Doing great. We're right here in the middle of summer, enjoying the content that we've already got on the site, working on a bunch of stuff behind the scenes to be published as soon as Monday. Very, very excited for all of that wall of content, essentially, for it to come out, all centered around the best ball format. So if you are a player on Underdog, FFPC, DraftKings, Drafters, be sure to check it out because we got plenty of content for you guys coming up.
Yeah, man. And we've talked about this a
Yeah.
couple of times already. Like that best ball, I say it. I keep saying the best ball guide, best in the business. Just great content, great
Thank you.
analytics. Definitely recommend everyone to read all of that. And we have some strategy. You and I were talking about that before. We have some strategy pieces. So like, there's so many different league formats, right? There's two quarterback, there's IDP, there's super flex, there's you have different strategies. We're going to talk about all of that as well. We have a draft strategy series that comes out as well next week there at the draft guys. So make sure you're checking all of that out. I am pumped today, man. I told you right before, and I'm gonna say here, like these little neural mints, dude. This is it right here. This gives you energy, focus. It has a little caffeine, L-theanine. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but apparently, it gives you a little focus and stuff. So it's pretty good. So if you haven't tried it, I strongly recommend it there.
I
Uh,
like it.
yeah, man. Yeah. So this week we had our outlooks come out. You did the wide receiver outlook. I did the tight end outlook. You want to talk a little bit about that, kind of what people could expect if they read that article and what they're trying to gather from that?
Sure. I added 60 different players, write-ups for them, put them in different tiers based on how I would draft them, with a PPR focus in mind. A lot of content behind it in terms of stats and data to back up why I have the players ranked where they are. And we also like to have a little fun over at Fantasy Guru, so we've made them in special tiers. And every year I change up the type of tiers that I use. This year I did ice cream flavors. So I
Oh,
gotta ask you, Armando, what is your 101 of ice cream flavors?
I keep it simple. It's vanilla, man. It's between vanilla and cookie and creams. I'm gonna go ahead and say vanilla. You can add the Oreo cookies to that if you want, but vanilla would be my top flavor, with cookie and cream being a very close second. What is the top flavor in that article? Is it chocolate?
Well, vanilla and cookies and cream were both in the top five.
All right, all right,
Number one, I went with Moose Tracks because we've got
okay.
the fudge in there, we've got the peanut butter cups, the vanilla ice cream, just a great combination. Anything with peanut butter cups is a A+ ice cream in my book.
I agree 100%. I didn't even I've never heard of that ice cream. I'm not lying to you. So
What?
I've never heard of that ice cream. So wait a minute. So is it a chocolate flavored ice cream with
Vanilla based
so it's vanilla based with
with
hot
hot
fudge?
and Moose Tracks. Well, it's frozen ice cream, so it's frozen fudge, but
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So,
Um,
okay. So frozen fudge and Reese's cups.
yep.
See, I gotta try that. That sounds like right up my alley. Like
We got plans. Take the kids out this weekend. There you go.
that really does sound really good. Yeah, I've been doing it for the same, the tiers. It's been steaks, and
hmm
we kept it at steaks. I did remove one of the steaks this year. I forgot which one. It's the last tier. So we start at the grass-fed ribeye and worked all the way down to, I think it's skirt steak or flat iron there. So go check that out. But yeah, I think it's about 7 or 8 tiers that I got. I did the top 30 tight end. Same concept as you, basically, geared towards PPR, half PPR, and kind of where we have them ranked and what we think about this upcoming season. So I'm very different. I have George Kittle as my tight end one for the season. So I went, I planted that flag, Tyler. You and I have talked about him on the podcast. We've talked about him on the live stream. both of us are pretty excited about him this upcoming season. So I have him as tight end one, man. I just think that this is a year that he has that kind of opportunity there in San Francisco. So I think he's also going at a great price. So
I
go
like
check that
that.
out. Yeah, man. Yeah, you got to take some bold stances sometimes, right? Like you got
Yeah.
to do that. And I feel like that's one that when you start looking back at the data, when you start looking at you basically look at everything, the situation, the role in the offense, what the offense is looking like in 2025. I think there's a serious path there for George Kittle, so long as he stays healthy, right? Like that's really what we need. But I think
Yeah,
that could be said about anyone.
not to give our whole draft guide away, but in our bold predictions, I had Kittle as my must-have player for this year. So I'm right there with you in lockstep. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a good year for Kittle and his fantasy managers. I feel it. I feel it. I feel it in my bones. All right, so we're here. We're going to talk NFC North. We've been doing this now. After this, I think podcast 99, and we've been doing it since then. We've done pretty much every division besides the NFC South. That'll be dropping on Friday. We're recording a day late here than we usually do. I was having some internet issues here in South Florida. We had bad weather. My internet was acting up. No real reason why. I'm not sure. But here we are today, recording one day later, Tyler, and we are going to be talking NFC North. Um, Before jumping into like we always do, we have the Bears. We got obviously the Packers. We got the Vikings. Um, where are you at here with this division? We got the Lions. I didn't want to forget them. Where are we at here with this division? I think up until maybe a day ago or two, I think Detroit was heavily favored here. I don't know if the news that we will talk about the offensive lineman retiring and how that impacts the team. But where are you at with this division? Do you feel like Detroit can run it back, or do you think this is going to be a very competitive division and it's up for grabs at this point?
I envision it being a tough division. Current odds right now, Lions plus 150, Packers plus 270, Vikings plus 310, Bears at plus 480. As far as that being like the fourth seed, that's one of the higher odds that we've seen among the NFL, and it might even be the highest if I'm not mistaken. So this is a competitive, tight division. Last year, three teams with double-digit wins. The Vikings with that 14-3 record, and still they were fighting for the division that final Week 18 matchup. It was a very, very exciting unit. I think it's going to be even more exciting in 2025 with the Ben Johnson storyline going from Detroit to Chicago, seeing that fourth place team maybe making a rise and seeing, I don't think we're going to have four double digit team wins here, but I think we're going to see a lot of teams very, very competitive and probably all very close to the 10 win mark. I'm excited for this team. This is our seventh division we've done, and this is arguably the most exciting one to me.
Yeah, I think there's so many moving parts, right? Like with all of these teams, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of new additions, a lot of changes. And I agree, man. I think it's going to be a very competitive division. I think you can make a strong case for almost every team, I think, in this division to be fighting for that top spot, right? So I look, I like this division. I think you can have potentially two, three playoff teams here. I think there's a path for that here. So yeah, I agree, man. I think this one's going to be a fun one, and I think it's going to go down to the wire. We've talked about how some of these divisions, there's a clear, superior team. That's not the case here. I think this is going to go down to the wire, like we've seen, in past years here. Let's jump right into it, and we go alphabetically order here. So we'll start with Chicago, and obviously you mentioned, they have the new coach there. They've added some key pieces to the offensive line. That was a huge issue for them last year. They've added some pieces to the offensive line. They obviously drafted a young tight end in Loveland there. Talk to me about this team, what they've done this offseason. How do you feel about them? Do you think they've done a good job to help their young quarterback in Caleb Williams, who took an abundance of sacks last season? Do you think that changes this year?
I do. We saw basically a tale of two halves for Caleb Williams in his rookie year. The first half, weeks 1 through 10, with Shane Waldron as the offensive coordinator. He was let go after week 10 after a week where they scored just 3 points in a game. Switched over to Thomas Brown weeks 11 through 18. And I posted our article for this podcast a bit early. So you can go over and see it on the website over at fantasyguru.com. But I have like the left and right splits basically between what Caleb did in those two different weeks or two different periods. The week 11 through week 18 span, across the board, he went up in EPA per play, success rate, completion percentage over expectation, sack rate, yards per attempt, adjusted completion rate, and the most important stat, fantasy points per game. So I think Caleb Williams going from Shane Waldron to Thomas Brown to now seeing another meteoric leap in play caller with Ben Johnson in the fold, we could see an even bigger jump where I think we were doing a roster coach live stream last Tuesday, and Russ mentioned him as a tier jumper, and it kind of opened my eyes thinking maybe I'm a little bit too low on Caleb, where he's surrounded by all these great weapons. They boosted the offensive line around him, add in some layup plays designed by Ben Johnson. Like last year's Lions, they were number one in play action rate. They were just getting Jared Goff into these plus situations to throw the ball. If they can get rid of the ball quickly for Caleb, which was the sack issue last year. We saw some minor steps towards that over the back half. And if they can get some more play action involved, Caleb was third to last in play action rate last year. I think there's a chance that we do see a meteoric rise and this guy really break out into the player that many people expected him to be as the number one overall selection. And when we talk Bears, I think it really just comes down to what Caleb Williams can do. I think that's really what the center of this team is. Very excited to see what this Ben Johnson team can do and what we're going to see in 2025. I think this is a team that can do far better than what their 5-12 record indicated last year. I'll just end that they went 3-7 in one score games. We tend to see that variance flip the other way on a year-to-year basis. So if they go 7-3, I think we're looking a lot better here.
Yeah, man. And I think you said it best, right? This is all on whether Caleb Williams is able to take that next step forward because they've put the pieces around him. I mean, they started as soon as they drafted him, they put a really good foundation there. They obviously needed some help, right? These rebuilding and these rebuilds take a little bit of time, but they did not waste any time. They added Joe Thuddy, all right? They added Drew Dahlman in there, Jonah Jackson. Like that interior of that offensive line is now very, very good. This is a very strong foundation that they've built here in this offensive line. I think they're going to be able to protect Caleb Williams here a little bit better. They obviously have, DJ Moore, Romo Duze entering the second year. They added Lovely. Like they their backfield has several players that you could, can rely on here. Like I I agree, man. Like for me, the only thing for me is I need to see it from Caleb Williams before I really buy into it, and that I'm going to be the type of fantasy player that I'll be late on the Caleb Williams like train. Like that's what's going to happen if he does get there and if he does become what many expect. I'm going to be late on that train, and I'm okay with that. I just want to see it come to fruition, but there's no denying that the Chicago Bears have done a phenomenal job to put this young man in a position to succeed. I really see it. You see it with the moves. This front office, this team has done a good job like the last two seasons putting the right pieces around them. I love the addition of Ben Johnson, like you mentioned. I think that's going to be huge here. We saw the success there in Detroit when he was calling the plays. So I I think that and then the good thing about that is he knows that Detroit Lions team very well with his when
Mhm.
it's in their division and that's not seen in the numbers and the stat sheets. Like he's going to know what they can do and what they cannot do offensively there. So I think it's a big win for Chicago there, adding him, and especially for this young quarterback who has a lot of potential and has all the tools around him. So it's just a matter of putting it all together and uh, produce. That's really what it comes down to here for him. Let's talk fantasy now. Caleb Williams. For some, he's QB1. For others, QB2. Still in the QB2 area where I prefer him as my second QB in a super flex or one quarter or a two quarterback league. In a single quarterback league, probably won't be landing on him as my QB1. Where are you at with him as far as where you want to draft him?
Yeah, it's a tough question because I think you kind of either are in the boat of him taking that step forward, or you think that it may be a bit more turbulent than like when we see these teams put all these changes together. Sometimes it's not the cleanest to start the year. It takes time, it takes a little bit of patience for them to get into a rhythm. I will say, like, I got to give a lot of kudos to the general manager, Ryan Poles. Usually we see one or the other of a general manager improving the offensive line or improving the weapons around a young signal caller. He was able to do both this offseason, a year after getting their wide receiver one and DJ Moore and getting, I'm sorry, 2 years from DJ Moore, 1 year from Roma Dunze. Now we had Colston Loveland. We had Luther Burden. They also spent a round two pick on an offensive tackle. Like I just really, really like the way everything's kind of rolling in Chicago right now in terms of the front office. Um, Fantasy wise, I think there's a chance that we see a bit more rushing as well from Caleb Williams, who sporadically displayed it. Um, was very inconsistent with it. He's kind of like on that Brock Purdy level where every now and then he would just flash those wheels just to remind you, yeah, I can pick up a 20 plus gain here and there. Curious to see if that happens a bit more with Ben Johnson, who didn't really have that with Jared Goff. Yet Goff still sporadically ran for first downs when the opportunity presented itself. I think you're spot on though, of where you want to put him fantasy wise in terms of like plus or minus QB 12. I'm kind of on the bullish side where I'm confident in that he can exceed his current ADP and jump into that top 12. We'll just have to see if it happens. But it's again one of those situations where do you want to be first or last to it? And if you're first to it, now's the time to buy Caleb. That's nothing new. Owners of Caleb are expecting the leap, so you're gonna have to be paying a very high price. But I still think sometimes it's worth buying on the way up where there's still value to be had. And I think Caleb could be one of those guys.
And I agree with you 100%, right? Like it's just a matter of where you stand with him. And I think by now everyone knows where they stand with Caleb Williams. I do think that I know I'm in the minority, and I understand that this is really good situation to be in for a young quarterback. Um, and I hope I'm proven wrong because I would like to see that leap forward, right? You always want to see the leap forward with these young quarterbacks. So interested to see, but he's coming off the board right now, an underdog QB 11 in round nine. So he's at low end QB one. I look, if he does take that big leap forward, that's going to be outstanding value. Like you're probably going to be paying maybe 2 round premium more later, next season. And it depends on how good he does. It might even be higher than that, right? Like we see how quickly these ADPs change with some of these quarterbacks and some of these players. So, if you're in camp of believing in Williams, this is the time to invest. If you remain skeptical, and you're okay with missing the train, understand you might miss the train. Like that's the way I would view it. And that's a decision ultimately you're going to have to make on draft day, and you're going to have to decide what team you want to be on there. Um, this receiving group, Tyler. So they have DJ Moore. He accounted for 27% of the target share last year. Roma Duze, 19% of the target share. They no longer have Keenan Allen, who accounted for 27% of the target share. I'm anticipating Roma Duze takes a step forward in year two here, and I expect him to be that number two guy. Um, do you agree with that, or do you think it's going to be Luther Burton who kind of takes on a large role there early on in his career?
It's a fair question, and I think there's going to be a lot of volatility with Burden and Loveland, the two rookies. I'll say Adunze was no stranger to volatility. He had a 61, where is it, 61.2% catchable target share last year. That was 84th among all 85 receivers with 50 plus targets. So that really comes down to me in terms of play calling. It really shows that the route designs were not ideal for Adunze with whatever Waldron and Brown were putting together. Throw Ben Johnson in there, a guy who finally got Jameson Williams finally healthy, finally reaches the 1,000 yard mark. And it's no surprise how Jameson found that success. They lowered his ADOT. They increased his yak per reception, just simply getting the ball in their playmakers' hands. Adunze, we saw a lot of vertical just jump balls from Michael Penix at Washington. They tried to kind of do that here in Chicago, and it didn't really work. So I'm expecting Ben Johnson to know that he's got a great talent in Adunze, a top 10 draft pick, and a guy that they can find different ways to get the ball rather than just vertical go balls. Um, so when you look at like a Dunze's profile from last year, it's not pretty. That said, I think a lot of that can be blamed on the quarterback situation. Caleb wasn't that great because he wasn't put in a position to succeed, and neither was Adunze in the routes that he was called to run. So I think Adunze as a breakout is an interesting call, and I think it's a fair call as a guy that could easily exceed his current ADP. DJ Moore, I also think, is in line for a bounce back. Who just honestly, he looked disinterested to close out the year. Like it looked like he did not care about running routes. We saw a big drop in his fantasy production, but I can't get back. I keep get my mind on that round or that sorry that year one season with Justin Fields where he averaged just shy of 17 fantasy points per game, wide receiver nine basically, and then he drops all the way down to wide receiver 28 this 2024 season in a year where he doesn't look like he cares that much in a losing 5-win campaign. these are the guys that I think are expected to carry the torch. I know people are going to be excited about Burden, former five-star prospect, really, really efficient year in 2023 in Missouri. 2024 was a bit of a down season for the entire offense there. Colston Loveland, coming off, he entered his 2024 season at Michigan with an injury, played through the injury all season long, broke the reception record among tight ends at all Michigan, had the highest receiving yardage market share ever recorded by a Power Five tight end. Like these are two elite prospects. These that is now added into this offense where it really just raises the floor for Caleb Williams in my eyes. So long, Keenan Allen. It was nice to have you for 1 year, but Burden, Loveland, they're going to be fun, exciting prospects to come. I just don't think that the payoff will be worth the price as of 2025.
I think, and I agree with you 100%. I think these are two players, especially a redraft, right? Leagues, that's kind of what we're alluding to here. I think it's better to buy the dip next year because there is going to be a dip, right? Because unless they exceed expectations or they hit expectations at their current price tag, I do think that there's going to be, I don't think they're going to reach expectations based on their current price tag. So that's why I think there's going to be a dip. We're seeing it with some of the rookies from last year, some of the running backs. We've talked about, guys like Trey Benson, like how their stock has dropped a little bit. We've talked about it with guys like Ray Davis. Like these are players that the stock dropped after last year because they just didn't get the role that some expected. And I think that could be the case here, especially for Loveland. I think Burden will have some peak weeks, and I think in best ball, I think he's a fun player to invest in, especially if you're bullish on this offense. But I do think Odunze steps into that number two role. I think they're going to find a really good way to utilize him effectively. And this is a smart coach, right? Like you mentioned it, how he used Jamison Williams last year and how effective he was. I think you're going to see the same. Like when you look at Odunze, he was top 15 among receivers in air yards last year. That's insane. Like he was up there. Like he had almost 1,400 air yards. Like he was up there in air yards. So he's someone that I think can benefit from shorter routes and from just putting the ball in his hands and let him create the play. And I think we're going to see that. I agree with you about DJ Moore, man. Like it just the only thing that concerns me about players like that is he going to let that happen again this year, right? Like if they're not competing, if things aren't going great, like is he going to do that again? He's never done that, at least not that I can recall. Um, but man, that is somewhat concerning there. I expect a bounce back year from him. I do. He's someone that, like you said, when he was there with Justin Fields, a top 10 wide receiver. I think he has potential to be, come back down to that top 17, 15, and you can make a strong case for, some can make a strong case for top 12. I prefer him as a wide receiver to myself, if I'm investing in him, not a wide receiver one. Though I do think there's going to be volatility with him, right? I do think there's going to be some
Mhm.
volatility because there's only one football here, Tyler, and we've talked about all the talent that this offense has, right? And let since we're talking receivers, we'll include the tight ends because we've talked about Loveland. I want to point this out. So Cole Kmet played in 89% of the offensive snaps last year. Like he was on the field a lot, 10% target share. Like he was not involved all that much in the passing game. He's going to be on the field a lot this year, I think, as well. Not 89%, but if he's on the field 60 to 70% of the time, are you going to be shocked here? I'm not. And I think that's going to be opportunities that are taken away from Loveland. And that's why I'm a little bit lower on Loveland than most. If you read the tight end outlook, you'll see that I'm lower on Loveland than most because of that, not because of the potential, the talent. Like there's a reason why he was a second round tight end, right? Because he's a freak athlete, the talent is there. I get all that, but you can't produce unless you're getting opportunities. And I think year one for him is going to be tough. So long as his team stays healthy, of course, it's going to be tough for him to walk into a massive path of opportunities. I just don't see it happening here. Any thoughts on Cole Kmet? Like I'm out on Cole Kmet, but I do think he's going to be on the field. Is he going to get a ton of targets? No, it's not going to lead to targets. We didn't see it last year, but I do think he's going to be on the field a lot.
For sure. We've seen Ben Johnson's offenses. They've historically been on the lower end of the 11 personnel rate, which is three receiver sets. That means we're going to see more tight end, multiple tight end sets. That's what we're going to see more of. And Komet has a sizable contract. He fits the mold of the typical inline Y tight end a bit more than what we've got with Loveland, who is more of the F type, the guy that can move around the formation, be that pre-snap guy that kind of is an indicator for what kind of defensive or what kind of scheme the defense is playing. To me, it's tough for these guys to either one to hit their ceiling. I think Komet will be on the field enough to steal enough volume away from Loveland. And then the pass rate, this is still going to be a team that leans on the run. I think they're going to be close to a 50-50. Um, I'm sorry, close to league average in pass rate over expectation, given what we've seen historically from these Ben Johnson offenses, where I don't think they're going to just suddenly be extremely pass heavy because they've invested an egregious amount of resources here. They're still a team that's probably going to want to run the ball, given what they've invested in the offensive line. So I'm not buying Loveland at his tight end 10 price tag. That seems like the absolute ceiling. And then Komet, just off the fantasy radar entirely. He's like a DFS showdown on a random Thursday night football game kind of play.
He is the last possible stake option available in my outlooks, ladies and gentlemen. I'm with you. I think that you're drafting Loveland at his seating, and I just don't see his seating this season, you know. And I'm okay. I would be okay being wrong in that if I indeed am, but there's just so many players. And we haven't even talked about the running backs. All right, well, anything else in the receiving group like that we may have missed, but I don't think so.
No, the veterans, like the depth pieces, aren't really exciting. It's like Olamide Zaccheaus, Devin Duvernay. Nah.
Nah, no, no, it's not this year. Um, so the backfield, DeAndre Swift, is there? Roshan Johnson is there. I'll say that I'm not interested in anyone behind these guys. Maybe you have a different take there, but I, th I'm not really all that interested in Swift myself. I might take some shots on Roshan. But where are you at with this backfield, man?
That's how I am. It's a backfield where Swift last year was dead last among all running backs in rush yards over expectation. I think some of that can be blamed on the line, some of that can be blamed on poor play calling and poor play design. Um, I'm just going to be honest. There's backs going off the board where Swift is that I'd much rather take. I'll list a few right here: Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones. I really like all four of those guys over Swift. I will say that there is a possibility Ben Johnson just truly elevates this offense. And in that situation, like let's say we're talking best outcome for Swift. We're not talking Jahmyr Gibbs here, but there's an upside worth pursuing in tournaments that I don't think is baked into his ADP. In your typical home league, your friends and family league, I think you can bypass Swift for the other names we just talked about. But in a tournament setting, I don't want to have 0% Swift in case he does greatly eclipse his RB 27 ADP, which I think if I were to put a percentage on it, I think it's a non-zero. Maybe it's a 10 to 15% chance that he puts up a, I don't know, top 15 season, but probably not much more than that. Roshan, in my eyes, is still in line for that David Montgomery role. He could be a guy that maybe sneakily gets double-digit touchdowns, 225 pounds. I like what Roshan brings to the table, and I think he's really going to be that guy that's their RB2 and not the rookie Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. I know a lot of people are high on him, but round seven draft capital, unimpressive film. I wasn't super sold on him. So I'm kind of with you where I think Roshan's my favorite way to play this, but I will take some swings on Swift in some tournaments.
I like the idea of taking shots on Swift in best ball tournaments because I do think that it could be volatile at times with him. But I do think that there could be some really massive weeks, right? The reason why I like Roshan, so like you're looking at RB 27 for Swift on this is underdog ADP guys that we're using here. And then RB 51 for Roshan. Like you said it. The first thing I thought about when I looked at this backfield, I'm like, Gibbs, and I'm not saying they're going to be those running backs, so please hear me out. Gibbs and Montgomery, the usage, how they're utilized, and I believe that they're going to use Roshan inside the 20 often. I think that they're going to use him inside the 10 often. I think they're going to use him inside the 5 often. Like that is the kind of running back he is. So if he falls into 8 to 12 touchdowns in that range, I think you're sitting on gold at RB 51. I'm in, man. I didn't like what I saw from Swift last year. I'll be honest. Yeah, I personally didn't like it. I was not really high on him. Um, Roshan, on the other hand, man, I'm digging him here at RB 51. Uh, I will and I think you make a good point, right? Like if especially if you're playing upwards of what, 100 lineups. Like you and I are close to that. Like I think I know you do upwards of 100 best ball lineups. I usually flirt with that number, 100 or so. Like if you're putting in that much volume, don't have zero Swift. Like if he goes off, you might not have success. So I think getting exposure to players like that makes a lot of sense. Especially, he is underpriced to his ceiling, right? So when you take that into account, there you go. But for me, I'm Roshan is one of those players that I'm probably going to have an unhealthy amount of exposure to this year. Um, just I look at those late round guys that have that kind of potential. I'm like, dude, it's a no-brainer for me. Like I pay nothing, it's a win-win. You pay nothing, and the best possible outcome is a big year out of him. If he finishes as a RB3 or flirts with that RB2 mark, like 27, 20, 28, like you're winning. Like you're doing well there. So count me in for some Roche. I'm with you on Monange. No, the answer is no. I no. I think it's an uphill battle for him, and it will take some injuries before he really gets any serious opportunities, at least early on in the season. And I think even throughout the season, you know.
Yep.
Anything else here, Tyler?
No, I think we're pretty much in line there with the RB situation.
All right, let's move on to Detroit. They obviously we talked about Ben Johnson leaving Detroit there. That's losing their coordinator is a big deal. They just lost Frank Ragnow, their center, dude. That is a massive loss to that offensive line. Like that was one of the best offensive lines in football. And they lost a key piece, their center. They did draft Tate Radlich there, who is expected now. He's a second rounder who's expected now to start at center for them, but still think it's a big loss. Um, they've added some pieces as well to the offensive to the defense. They also lost their defensive coordinator. So like a lot of movement here of personnel and not only players but also like coaches and stuff. Is Detroit in trouble in 2025?
I think so. If you're trying to expect another 15 win season, yeah, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed. This is a team that got there despite all of the injuries they sustained. They were the number one team in terms of score differential at 222 points above in the positive. Like they outscored their defense allowed by that much. Um, they got a quick bounce in the playoffs, which was unfortunate for a team that many had high aspirations for, but this is just an offense that was rolling. No shock at all that Ben Johnson got a lot of offers for head coach gigs. He got the same amount of offers last season, just decided to wait until he found a better opportunity that was more suited for what he was willing to take on. And kudos to him for getting a new job. But yeah, it's tough when a team has to rehire or has to hire a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator at the same time. That said, if this team can stay healthy, I think they're poised for a good run. They bring back a lot of the same players on offense and defense. Um, really didn't make much moves in terms of signing veterans. They did lose their center, Frank Ragnow, as you talked about, their right guard, Kevin Zeitler. He went to Tennessee. So seeing them replace two out of five linemen is a concern for a team that's so heavily dependent on the rushing attack and everything that they bring there. Um, but yeah, I think we're going to see Ratledge, like you said, Graham Glasgow probably also maybe moving to center. I don't know how that's going to shake out. That might be something they figure out in camp. I think this team is basically just re-rolling what happened last year and hoping injury variance goes the opposite direction for them. So if that works for them, I think they're in contention to be the top team here. The odds certainly show it. I'd probably rather not make that wager. I'd probably rather go with one of the other teams to make it a run. We'll talk about them later, though.
I think we're going to be on the same page here as well. So this is my thing. Like I feel like they are still before all this. You think, all right, man, they have another run left in them and stuff like that. I think this just kind of puts a couple of bumps on the road for them, right? I think it's gonna make that path a little bit more difficult. I agree with you. I still think they're gonna be competitive. Campbell does a great job there as their head coach, and the team plays for him. The team believes in him. He's built something special there, right, in the locker room, and I think that is still there. And that foundation is still there. He just has to have a different supporting cast helping him out. Hopefully, they could be as efficient as Glenn and Johnson were last year on the defense and offensive side of the ball. Because let me tell you, Aaron Glenn did a phenomenal job. You mentioned all the injuries, and most of them were on defense. And yeah, that defense wasn't great. The numbers dipped, but he did more wonders with the personnel that he had, I think, to a certain extent there. So kudos to him. That's a big loss there for them. So yeah, man, I think they're going to compete, but I wouldn't bet it that they win. I last year I had said that last season they're going to win their division. They're going to win the division. I'm not saying it confident this year. Like I cannot say that they're going to win. I believe that they can and they might, but I'm not putting the flag down. Not like I did last year, not like I did the year before. I just can't do it. All right, let's
Yeah,
talk
I'm with you.
about yeah, let's talk about fantasy here. So we obviously know Johnson no longer there, so that obviously impacts the offense. Jared Goff, he's someone that is it sexy? Isn't you look at him, you're like, God, do I really want to draft Goff? But he's been super consistent. He's been very productive, very efficient. Are you concerned that he loses his offense coordinator here today?
I think it is a concern. He is coming off a career high in fantasy points per game, QB7. Uh, Played really well in terms of passing yardage production, 4,000 yards for the third straight season, coming off a career high in touchdown rate and yards per attempt. Um, I just worry the magic that Ben Johnson dialed up with some goofy ass plays that he was able to call. It's just not going to be there. And we're going to see probably a drop in yards per attempt and probably a drop in touchdown rate as a result. I think drafters are accurately projecting that kind of drop in Goff's production. Like, I don't think a repeat QB7 performance is in the cards. And his ADP, QB13, feels honestly still a little bit high for a guy that offers next to nothing rushing. He's probably not going to be a player I'm going to target outside of best ball stacks where I take either one of Amon-Ra or Laporta or Jameson early in the draft and then just tack off on later. Outside of that, this guy's not a priority click for me at all.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you here because I'm a big golf guy, but you can't ignore the numbers, man. Like there's something that I see that's a common factor here. 2022, you finished QB8. 2023, QB6. 2024, QB6. This is PPR score, not points per game. Ben Johnson was coordinator each of those years. Like, it, is he going to do it? Can he be a top 12 quarterback again without Ben Johnson? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And I don't want to draft him as such. Like in years past, he was one of those guys that I would gravitate towards, wait around and be okay with, like because yeah, he's not a high seeding guy, but he found a way to get there. He found a way to finish top 12 and outperform his ADP. I, I I'm not buying it the current ADP. Will I have some exposure? Probably, because I do play a lot of volume. But am I as bullish on Jared Goff this year as I was in years past? No, I'm not. Um, not this year. So I agree. So you're looking at high end QB2, kind of mid range QB2 is where you're at with him.
I would even put a mid-range QB2 because I think there's a lot of guys in that bucket, that middle QB2 bucket, that have a better shot at exceeding expectations than Goff.
I agree with that. I think there's like you look at it like that Prescott's in that range. Drake May's in that range. Like, just to kind of name you a few, Jordan Love is in that range. Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
it's a deep
Like,
tier.
you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's you could keep going down and down and down and down and down, and you could make a strong case for a lot of these guys over Goff, or at least in that same tier as Goff, right? So yeah, man, it's tough because I'm a big fan of golf, but I think that there's just a lot of things going against him here, in it going into 2025 here. Let's look at the supporting cast here. You mentioned Jameson Williams had a big season coming off a big year there. You obviously still have Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best receivers in football. Sam Laporta regressed last season to a certain extent. I think just expectations were a little high for him, and he just didn't live up to expectations there. They also have Tim Patrick. I think he's an underrated NFL receiver. Like I think like he's just when healthy, man. Like he can get things done and he can make an impact. And maybe not from a fantasy lens, because of there's only one football. We just talked about several pass catchers are ahead of him in the pecking order, and we haven't even discussed their backfield here. But talk to me about this receiving group, wide receivers, tight ends. Like where are we at here with these guys?
It's a great group. I mean, there's a lot of talent here for sure. Let's talk Amon-Ra St. Brown. Since entering the league, number one in most receptions. I believe he's tied with Tyreek Hill, if I'm not mistaken. Um, PPR, just a lot of points there. Very, very high a very, very high floor. And last year we saw the ceiling come through when he scored 12 touchdowns, a career high. I just think the regression that we're expecting for Jared Goff has to be taken into his wide receiver one as well. So a guy that's kind of been a locked in wide receiver one, round one selection these last two seasons. I feel far more comfortable taking him in round two. And I won't be taking him with any top 12 picks this year. So he's a click for me in round two for sure, but I think he's probably being drafted at a ceiling. JMO, we heard Dan Campbell and company all talk very bullishly about his outlook for 2025. They think the sky's the limit for him. I'm in that same wavelength. Last year, the first time he was finally healthy, wasn't suspended, wasn't gambling, wasn't doing anything silly off the field. Um, but if healthy, I think these two are one of those combos that can be like the sneaky top 24 combos that both fall into the top 24 if everything goes right. In fact, it won't even shock me if some of the catch and run opportunities that Jameson Williams will get will be at a greater rate this year, given the play caller, Declan Doyle, who comes over from Denver. Denver last year, number one in most targets behind the line of scrimmage for receivers. So sure that some of those will be just quick hitters to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I could also see screens to Jameson where he shakes and bakes one or two guys and then he's off to the races. And nobody's catching Jameson Williams from behind. Um, for that for the upside for all the best ball research I've been doing, like I'm just Jameson. I don't want to neglect this dude going into drafts. I think he has a good chance at exceeding ADP. But those are the two receivers I think really to focus on. We've seen other guys randomly step up. You talked about Tim Patrick, Cleve Raymond stepped up sporadically. They added a third round pick in Isaac Tesla, but I really think it's going to be those two and then Sam Laporta as the third guy, where all three of these guys are probably going to be just the nucleus of the passing attack with some sporadic targets to Gibbs. But Laporta, man, he was phenomenal as a rookie. Tight end three overall on a per game basis. I believe he scored the most total fantasy points, but on a per game basis, it was 14.1, tight end three. And then you got to keep in mind with Laporta, I think everyone forgets that he ended the season with an ankle injury, really slowed him down over that first half of 2024. But when we look at week 8 through the divisional round, he averaged 13.6 fantasy points per game, basically what he averaged the season prior as a rookie. And that was with a breakout unfolding with Jameson going on in the mix. So when we look at like tiers, I think we're looking at guys like Bowers and McBride. You can throw Kittle in there. I know we do. But right after that three, I think Laporta's tight end four with an exclamation point because I think it's almost like a mini teardrop after Laporta, where the tight end five, I think some people are trying to throw Jonnu in there. Um, I think it's Laporta at tight end four, and he's the safety blanket if you miss out on the top three options.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned it, like he was returning from injury, and we talk about this all the time, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get going, to get up to full speed. So he had 7 touchdowns last season. He scored 6 of those from week 8 on. Like, there you go, right? Like it just took some time, ladies and gentlemen. Like this is why I like we'll talk about Hawkinson soon. This is why I like Hawkinson as well this upcoming season, right? Like we'll talk about that. But I agree with you. So Laporta for me is in that second tier. He is the number one guy in that second tier for me, ahead of, the Travis Kelce's of the world, ahead of Mark Andrews of the world. And it's just now we're transitioning to the younger tight end who showed that he could be tight end one. He already did it one year. Right? Like
Yep.
he showed he could be tight end one. So I'm with you. I'm buying Laporta at where he's going. I'm okay with buying there. I'm okay with Jameson Williams and best ball. In redraft, I am a little bit hesitant, especially if he is going in that fourth round. Like I feel like that's a hefty price tag. I think there's gonna be volatility with that floor. I do have some concerns there. Um, I'm still okay with Amon-Ra St. Brown. You are paying, agree with you that you're paying a ceiling price, but I think you're going to still get top 12 production out of him. And we're talking about, remember, ceiling price is top three, right? You might not get there, but I still think you're going to get, especially in a PPR format, I still think you're going to get upwards of 100 catches and, upwards of 1,100 yards. It's just a matter of can you get it in the touchdown department again? Like that's kind of where it's at. But I do envision that for him this upcoming season. He's had over 100 receptions, if I'm not mistaken, in all but 1 year. Pulling that up now. Yeah. So he has 106 in 2022, 119 and 115 last year. 90 receptions in year one for 912 yards. That year he finished wide receiver 22. Um, so I think somewhere like in that 100 catch to 110 catch range, 11 to 1200 yards and what 6 to 10 touchdowns. I think you're going to get top 12 production out of him. I think he gives you a strong floor. But in basketball, I think having exposure to Jamison Williams makes a lot of sense. I'm with you. I'm out on Tim Patrick. I feel like he's more of a 1 week DFS play that you maybe consider in a game that you want to stack and you're looking for, find a coverage that you're looking for, whatnot, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, but redraft, nah. I just there's only again we go back to there's only one football here. Um, anything else with these pass casters for Detroit?
No, we had
All right, let's discuss the running back position here in Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs coming off a great season. David Montgomery still very much involved. He dealt with some injuries last year. Um, But I do think we've seen the passing of the torch, right? I think it's pretty clear cut now. This is Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy. David Montgomery will have a role, but both still have fantasy relevance. Now, with the offensive line changes that we've seen, are you concerned about Gibbs at where he's going, or do you think he's going to see enough opportunities here to be that top five running back that he's being drafted as?
No, I think he can definitely hit top five status. The problem is touchdowns, where Montgomery just is such a great scorer from within the five or within the 10. But Gibbs, fantastic season he's coming off. When I look at like players over their first 2 years in the league, he's one of just 12 backs that has cleared 3,000 plus yards from scrimmage and 30 plus touchdowns over the first two seasons combined. That's just ridiculous. Just a ridiculously productive fantasy asset. And when we look at like the splits, he's only played in 6 games without David Montgomery. And in those 6 games, Jahmyr Gibbs has averaged 27 plus fantasy points per game. So he has the ability to finish as the number one RB if Montgomery were to, I don't know, unfortunately have a season ending injury early in the year. That said, I do think there's arguments for other backs to go ahead of him, namely Bijan Robinson, where they don't have that same split committee and that same worry. Gibbs to me is more of a back end round one selection, but this guy's got a sky high ceiling, a sky high floor. His work in the receiving game, fantastic. His work as an explosive rusher, fantastic. There's nothing really negative to say here about this backfield duo. Both these guys have a shot at finishing as top 25 backs.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I'm good with either or. Like I view as
Yeah.
if you draft Jahmyr Gibbs, good for you. If you miss out on him and you get David Montgomery, good for you too. Like that's just like how like I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you. If you do, then I can't do this exercise, but how many opportunities do you think these two had combined last
Oh,
season?
uh, 375.
500 combined. All right. 536 opportunities. Gibbs had over 300, right? 313 to be exact. And maybe my math is wrong, right? So you guys could do the math yourselves. But 313 for Gibbs, 223 for Montgomery. That's insane. That's insane. Like Montgomery was getting RB1 opportunities for another backfield, essentially. That's the kind of opportunities you're going to get here in this backfield. Do I have concerns about the offensive line? Sure, but I do think that it's still a well above average offensive line. I still think that this is, a good unit. So, and they're going to run the foot. That's the physical style of this offense. That's the identity of this offense. They're going to continue to establish the run, and they have the backfield to do it. So I'm in on both of these running backs. I agree with you, whether it's one or the other. Now, I will say this because there's probably a question some people have. If I draft one, I'm probably not going to I'm probably not going to draft the other because if you do so, it's with the intention of starting both every week. That's the way I would do it. It's not to handcuff. It's if you draft Gibbs and you draft Montgomery, in my opinion, is with the intention of starting both backs each and every week. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery finished RB 15 and RB 16 these last two
Yeah.
seasons. He's not someone to throw on the bench just because you're starting Gibbs.
Yeah, it's just the reason I bring that up is because sometimes there's people that are hesitant to start. But oh, I have both. Who do I start? Like, well, you drafted both. You started both. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, that's the way I see it. Is like,
You
are you embracing volatility when you do that? Sure, but you do it.
yeah, you drew
Um,
those cards, you play them.
correct. Yeah. All right. Anything else here, Tyler?
No, I will say Craig Reynolds tentatively holds that RB3 role, but if anything were to happen to him, uh, I think there's a chance for somebody sneakily to emerge off waiver wires because this is just such a fantasy rich backfield.
Who would you? So, let me see here. Craig Reynolds. Is that who you would go with?
I don't know. It's really tough to be bullish on Craig Reynolds. He hasn't done much.
Sion Vacky. Ugh. Boy, I'm pretty sure they'll add someone else before
Yeah.
they go with Reynolds here. Um, all right.
Vaki's kind of a fun story just as the linebacker turned running back story, but
Yeah.
that's more for preseason DFS.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers here. They added some pieces to the defensive side. They added Aaron Banks here, guard Aaron Banks. They lost Josh Myers, their center. They lost some pieces on the defensive side. They lost AJ Dillon. They drafted Matthew Golden. They added some offensive line in the draft, another receiver in the draft. This is a very young team, a very young roster. I think it's a very fun roster here. Tyler, talk to me about the Packers. Like, did they do anything this offseason that you say, wow, I think they're taking a big step forward, or do you just think they're continuing to build that foundation that they already have?
Getting Aaron Banks, that was a big deal. A 4 year, $77 million contract should step in right away at left guard. I like what he brings to the table. This was a team, though. I mean, I look at it like rewind the clock a year ago. They added Josh Jacobs on, I think it was like a 4 year contract. Um, they worked him to the bone. This guy had a lot of work, top six in rush attempts. This team was 31st in pass rate over expectation. They centered their offense around running the ball with Josh Jacobs. A lot of RPOs, a lot of volume for Jacobs in a year where AJ Dillon was lost in the preseason. RB2, Marshawn Lloyd was lost after just one game. So this was just really Jacobs' backfield to own, and he was basically the storyline of the Packers. Um, when I think about how far this team can go in 2025, it's based around him and it's based on around the defense playing better. I think the defense was really their Achilles heel because this was an offense top 10 in points per game, top 5 in yards per game. They really just need the defense to step up and hold their own. I will mention they went 1-5 in the division and they went 5-5 in one score games.
Yeah, I think this team has potential. And I
Yeah.
think there's a high ceiling. I just don't know if it's there yet. I don't know if this is the year they reach the ceiling. All right. So with hearing you say that, I think we're both on the same page on the team we think is going to make some noise. We haven't talked about them yet. We're going to be talking about them next. Chris Rose will be very happy, I think. Um, I think this team, if honestly, if we're looking at it from a fantasy standpoint, I look at Jordan Love and he's that QB2 that has QB1 upside. That's how I'm viewing him as, like treating him as a QB2 going into the season. If he finishes at the top 12 quarterback, are you going to be surprised this year?
No, I don't think I would
No.
be.
I'm a big fan of his, and I think that he has. I mean, I think he's a really good quarterback. I think you know what you're going to get from him. I think there's a pretty decent floor. I think there's some upside, but again, he falls into that tier of quarterbacks where I don't want to put him in the same tier as Jared Goff, but in that tier where it's like I'm okay with him as my QB2. I prefer him as my QB2. Would I be surprised if he finishes as a low end QB1? No. Like that's where I'm at with Jordan Love here. Tyler, where are you at with him?
Yeah, he's that kind of QB2 where you ride the waves, the variance, the up and down throughout the season because you know there will be some spike weeks along the way. I will say he finished as a QB2 or lower in 9 of 15 games last year, but last year he was also hampered by injury. He wasn't running the ball much. He had just a 3.2% sack rate. That was very, very low in the league. So they were a team that got the ball out of his hands quickly, knowing that he didn't have a lot of mobility. Despite that lack of mobility, this was the team that ranked number 2 in RPO rate. They were frequently handing the ball off to Jacobs or getting some quick hitters out to the guys in space. Uh, And as a result, Love had a pretty good year. He was quarterback 7 in EPA per dropback. Um, Career high 5.9% touchdown rate. His yards per attempt climbed up to 8.0 after a 7.2 showing his first year as a starter. This is a team that stretches defenses vertically. They do a lot of horizontal motion. They do a lot of screens, a lot of shots behind the field. Um, and then every now and then they let Jordan Love just unleash the cannon that he's got. And they don't have Christian Watson for this year. It looks like he's still recovering from surgery. Might come back midseason. He's off my fantasy radar entirely. He is not a click I would be making in any single drafts at all. But they drafted Matthew Golden, a guy with 4.29 speed to take over that downfield threat role and not have Dontavian Wicks and his league leading drop rate operate in that role. So excited to see what Golden brings. I think he will definitely help create some rushing room for Josh Jacobs. Circling back to Love, though, I think we're looking at a guy I'm content with his QB 17 ADP, where I'm really not aggressively targeting him, but if I find a team where it makes sense to add him on as my quarterback too, I'm content with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to describe it right there, right? Like you're not overly excited to draft him as ADP, but you see him there, you need a second quarterback. You're like, all right, I'll make that click. Like, why not? And that's where I'm at with him this year as well. So I think QB 17 is spot on. I was gonna tell you I have him probably around QB 18, QB 19, so right on par with that ADP going into the season. You mentioned the pass catchers here. I think this is probably one of the most difficult receiving group to decipher. Like I'm just gonna read off some numbers here. Romeo Dobbs, 20%, Jaden Reed, 16%, Dontavian Wicks, 16%, Tucker Craft, 15%, Christian Watson, 13%. Those are all target shares. Like that's as annoying as it comes for fantasy managers. I don't think it changes this year if we're being 100% honest, Tyler. Where are you at with these pass catchers?
You said it's a challenging one. I think it's super easy. They're all fades to me.
Well, it's a challenging one if you're trying to invest. I'm with you. I'll be honest. I was a Romeo Dobbs like guy last year. I added him. I felt like he gave you a pretty safe floor. I felt like he was gonna be a good red zone guy. He did lead the pack with 20% target share, but what does that really get you? It gets you 72 targets, ladies and gentlemen. That's
Yeah.
not a lot of targets.
Wide receiver 48, barely
Yeah,
on the flex radar.
correct, correct. So you were getting him at a cheaper price, I think. But I agree with you, man. Like I look at this situation and I'm not interested. I,
Yeah,
I, I
you mentioned the target shares. I also mentioned 31st in pass rate over expectation. So it's a small pie that we're working with small pieces in a small pie for each individual receiver, pass catcher. I'm out, man. I don't really find any reason to get any of these guys. You can argue Jaden Reed's the top playmaker. 4.4 targets per game last year. That doesn't help you. Like in his two target games where he doesn't reach the end zone, you are left very angry and frustrated. 69% route share is nice, but it's a lot of volatility for start sit formats. And I think Reed's arguably the most exciting fantasy pass catcher here. Maybe Tucker Craft. He wrestled that tight end one role away from Luke Musgrave early in the year last year. Led all tight ends in yak per reception. I thought that was notable. Um, but he's tight end 13. He's just I don't know if he reaches top 10 status. I think best case, he returns top 13 fantasy points. Averaged just shy of 10 fantasy points per game last year. He's a fine click, but I again, not in a typical redraft start sit format. He's really just a tight end two in best ball for me. We could talk Dobbs, we could talk Wicks, we could talk Savion Williams, we can talk Matthew Golden. All these guys are just
guys. Like that's what they
guys.
are. That's what they are. They're
Yeah.
guys, dude. Like that's the best way to describe it. Like so for perspective, like if you're looking at underdog ADP, right? Because I pulled it up here. So Matthew Golden, a wide receiver 42, Jada Reed, wide receiver 43. You look at some of the players in that range. Jawan Jennings is not far behind. Odunze, we've talked about him. Ricky Pearsall, we talked about him in the last show. Khalil Shakir, we've talked about him, the floor guy. Not super excited. You have Josh Downs going later. Like Jalen Higgins going later. I don't know, man. That's why I keep leaning on Dobbs as wide receiver 68. So, like, if he gives you that top 48, like, so I think if I'm doing best ball and I want a Packer stack, I don't know if I'm going to be investing in Golden to read at 43, 42, maybe, but I kind of like Kraft and Dobbs again. Like I really do. Like if we're looking at price, like I like Kraft and Dobbs, but again, I think it's gonna be very volatile. And I think that the production is going when this team is completely healthy, and we're always talking about these teams being completely healthy. I think it's gonna vary from week to week, right? I think I would bet that Kraft may offer the safest floor, and it's not even an appealing floor. It's a 8 to 12 fantasy point per week floor, I would say. And I maybe that's a little bit bullish. Um, but I'm with you, man. I just Kraft would be the guy I feel most comfortable about clicking, and he's a tight end. So, and I have him as a tight end too as well. Let's talk about this backfield. You said a lot about Josh Jacobs and how much they utilize him and how good of a season he had. We've seen this though, right? With story with Jacobs, where we saw it in 2022. He had 405 opportunities and then just didn't look right in 2023. And I'm not saying that's going to happen this upcoming season, but 344 opportunities last year. I think that's notable. It's the second highest mark of his career. He looked good. He looked great. And I think if he can stay healthy, I think he'll once again be, I think he'll be in that top 12 range again in this offense, especially with that kind of usage. Where are you at with Jacobs? Are you investing in him? Are you concerned about the wear and tear? Where are we at with him?
I'm not overly concerned with it, namely because this team maxed out at 301 attempts for him. And that was like, I think, best case situation. We talk about the running back position being rather replaceable because it's kind of just always next man up. And I think Jacobs kind of illustrated that really well last year, where he didn't really do well in any advanced metrics. Like, when I look at all backs with 100 plus carries, there were 41 total of them that fit that criteria. He was 32nd in explosive run rate, 14th in missed tackles forced per attempt, and 19th in yards after contact per attempt. Very just pedestrian results there. But when we look at it from a pure volume standpoint, he was the RB6 in total rush attempts, RB8 in rushing yards, RB5 in rushing touchdowns. And because of that volume, pure volume, Jacobs was able to get there. What happens in year two if we got a healthy Marshawn Lloyd here who's now clamoring for some carries and opportunities? What if the defense takes a step back and forces them to throw more? This was a guy that purely got by on rush volume, and they're typically not the bets I like to make because usually increased efficiency and increased advanced metrics generally leads to more opportunities. But when you get the opportunities and you're not really shining that much, it just signals to me that there's a chance that you're not going to be a lock for the 18 to 20 opportunities you were getting the season prior. So I think there's a bit of risk for him. He's not a player I'm actively targeting. I do want to have maybe match the field, which is 8.3% ownership. That's kind of where I want to be with Jacobs. Not a player I'm overly investing in, given that I think there's a chance he falls off. Um, but I do think he does sport because of how heavily they want to run the ball in this LaFleur system, the possibility to return some quality spike weeks anytime he reaches the end zone.
Yeah, I agree. He's coming off the board RB10, and I think that's fair, right? Like, I think that that's a fair price tag. I do agree with you. There are some minor concerns here. And that's why I pointed out that usage. We kind of saw it the year
Yeah.
before last. Now, do I think he's just gonna fall flat and not produce? No, I don't think that's the case. But he finished RB6 last year. I think our top 12 RB again, man. Like I really do think it's a volume-based play. And so long as he stays healthy, I think he's gonna see, upwards of 300 opportunities here in 2025. So um I'm okay with taking him. But again, like you said, not someone that we're rushing out and going out of our way to get, right? Like you're not running to go get Josh Jacobs like you are, you know, running to get Jamar Chase or people like that. So anything
Lloyd
else you
Cuff? Yeah, question. Marshawn Lloyd a cuff for you?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
same,
yes.
same.
Yeah, 100%. Um we it never happened with Dylan, like right, like people wanted it just never happened with Dylan, but I think I would argue that Lloyd's a better running back. I think LaFleur would give him those opportunities. I think you could see Floyd step into if Jacob were to miss time, maybe not 20 plus opportunities, but 16 to 18 I think is very feasible for Lloyd. Do you
Yeah, for
think?
sure. And they've got a great blocking scheme. I think
Yeah,
Lloyd would do really well in it.
yeah, I think so. Anything else here?
No, we can move on.
All right, let's talk about the golden team in this division, the Minnesota Vikings, and why it is you think that they are that team that could be threatening in this division. Um, they obviously lost Sam Darnold. I don't see that as a massive loss when you have JJ McCarthy coming in. If we're being 100%, I think McCarthy's a better quarterback. Um, they drafted offensive line. They lost some pieces of the defense as well. They also lost Daniel Jones, who was a back quarterback there. They lost offensive line. They added two defensive tackles this offseason. Hargrave, really good addition there. Allen, a good addition. They added center, Ryan Kelly. They added guard, Will Fries. They added Jordan Mason. I think that's a very sneaky addition. All right, that I don't think is a lot of people are paying attention to that in the fantasy community, and I think that's huge. Um, I mean, they retain Aaron Jones, who looked really good in this system. Talk to me about this team because I know you're excited about it. I'm excited about them. I know Chris Rose is excited about them. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other people excited about this Minnesota Vikings this year.
Yeah, you talked about the free agents they added. This was the team that entered the NFL draft with the fewest picks, and I still really like what they did. You talked about the offensive line guys and Will Fries and Ryan Kelly. They also spent a round one pick on Ohio State's Donovan Jackson, who I think is the starter right away at that left guard spot. They spent a round three pick on Ty Felton out of Maryland. These are guys that I expect to be well, fantasy relevant to a certain degree with the offensive line, quote unquote. But I think they're instant impact players that really help a team that kind of felt a bit fluky going 14-3, but they were one of the best feel-good stories of the NFL last season. You kind of felt for them after losing J.J. McCarthy, a top 10 pick in the rookie draft before the season even started. Sam Darnold came through with a top 12 season in EPA per dropback and completion percentage over expectation. Just really did well running this offense that Kevin O'Connell has had success with multiple quarterbacks now when we look back on it. Josh Dobbs has done really well. Kirk Cousins has done really well. Sam Darnold. There's another guy that's eluding me right now, but they've had multiple QBs that have been able to step in
Joshua
and
Dobbs, maybe?
I did mention him, yeah.
Okay, okay.
There's another guy, a fourth guy, another backup who played for just a handful of games, but um, Nick Mullins, that's who it
There you
was.
go.
There have been several players that have been able to just come in and operate this Kevin O'Connell offense, which has been top six in pass rate over expectation each of the last 3 years. They've got the best supporting cast any quarterback could ask for. They've got an offensive line that would significantly improve this offseason, and they get back left tackle Christian Darrisaw, who was coming off a torn ACL, MCL from midseason last year. So when I look at this offensive line, I look at the quarterback situation with JJ McCarthy, a top 10 pick who is phenomenal as a prospect. We'll talk about him in a minute. I'm just very, very excited for this team. And then when you throw in the defense, all the moves that we've seen from the general manager, Adolfo Mensa, I just really like the way this whole team's been built and how it's come together. Very bullish on this team.
You mentioned it, man. Like I think they've added a lot of key pieces, like especially to the offensive line, protecting their young quarterback. You have a very good receiving group. You have one of the best receivers in football. TJ Hawkinson now like 1 year removed from returning from an injury. Like I like this a lot, man. I like the moves. You have Brian Flores there, defensive coordinator, very good defensive coordinator. You add some pieces to the defense. Like I think this team is going to be competing. And the thing is, I don't think that McCarthy's going to have to do all that much. And you mentioned O'Connell, how great he's done, right? Like you mentioned O'Connell, how good he's done with quarterbacks. Man, like I know you look at it, it's like, well, he 1 year missed. That's 1 year sitting down, learning this playbook, 1 year sitting down, like going through everything, learning this offense, picking the brain of, and I know Sam Darnold's not a great quarterback, but picking a brain of a veteran quarterback, picking the brain of Coach O'Connell, like, dude, like I'm super excited. Like I have a JJ, I pulled a JJ McCarthy rookie card, and I am looking at that thing,
Hey.
and I'm like, I'm cashing in on this baby. Yes. So yeah, man, I'm very bullish on this offense. I'm very bullish on the Vikings overall, man. And there's gonna be some futures being placed. That's without a doubt on this team. So, um, let's talk JJ McCarthy. All right. So as excited as I am about him, I'm also not going to take him as my QB1. I'm not doing that. Um, I will say this. in two quarterback and super flex leagues, I do want a lot of exposure to him, right? I do think that there's a path for a pretty good season from him, especially when you compare his ADP, right? Like where ADP and where you expect him to finish up the season. Um, Talk to me about him. Like where you're not taking him as your QB1, right?
You don't need to. He's going QB 20 in ADP. I think if you take a volatile QB or a QB that maybe has some injury history, let's say Jaden Daniels, maybe you take McCarthy as your quarterback too if you're the type of person that holds a second quarterback. Uh, I think you can make the same argument with Justin Fields, or even some of the stationary QBs where you just kind of rotate based off matchup. Those are the situations where I would draft McCarthy in a redraft setting. Superflex 2 QB, I think he greatly eclipses his QB 20 ranking where I would be prioritizing him almost like towards the top of that tier. I think he has top 12 ceiling. I mean, we just saw it from Darnold where he's been able to come in and just produce right away. We saw it with Kirk Cousins able to come in and produce right away. I think McCarthy is just such a special talent. Like he's got the three things that I typically look for in a quarterback in terms of arm strength, arm accuracy, and some hidden mobility. His strength, he threw a 61 mile per hour velocity throw at the NFL Combine. The NFL record is 62, held by Josh Allen and Big Joe Milton. 80.0% adjusted accuracy rating by PFF. His final year at Michigan, that was number 4 in the nation among all Power 5 quarterbacks. And then the mobility, 4.57 second 40. This dude's got wheels. So he's got an accurate, lively arm with some mobility. This guy has everything you look for in a top 12 quarterback. Then you add in the improved offensive line, the supporting cast, the play calling. I'm in, man. He's a bona fide sleeper.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in. I'm in. I'm drafting. I'm gonna take him in best ball.
Yep.
I'm going to be taking them in super flex leagues. I know my home league members. Some of them hear the podcast. Said we're gonna have to duke it out, guys. We're gonna have to duke it out because I'm gonna get them first. So I'll be reaching for him in those kind of leagues as well there. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I think a certified QB2 with that low end QB1, high end QB2 upside. I really do think there's that kind of potential there
Yep.
for JJ McCarthy, man. The supporting cast is phenomenal. Let's talk a little bit about the receivers here. You have Justin Jefferson, obviously. I don't think I have to say much about Justin Jefferson, right? Like I think we all know top two, three receiver in most rankings. I don't think that that's crazy or outlandish by any means. I think we've seen it already from him year in and year out. He accounted for a 30% target share last year. Superstar receiver there. You have Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson to me is interesting. We'll talk about him a little bit here, but talk to me about these pass catchers, Tyler. Where are you at with all right, Justin Jefferson? Are you taking him with a top 5 pick in your fantasy drafts this year?
Yeah, I think he's a top 5 selection for sure.
Okay.
I mainly play in PPR formats. We saw extremely great production over his career with Kirk Cousins, but even if we like siphon out the games where he hasn't played with Cousins, the drop off is like just about 2.0 fantasy points. So it goes from a guy averaging 20 fantasy points to 18. Um, that was with some roller coaster quarterback production. I'll say that. There's some highs and lows, but Jefferson himself, just a phenomenal asset, fantasy player, whatever you want to say. I think you're overthinking it if you let him slide outside your top 5. He kind of just proved all those naysayers wrong last year doing it with Darnold.
Yeah.
Um, Jordan Addison, this dude just continues to impress me because his 2023 campaign was super touchdown heavy, kind of repeated it again in 24, very touchdown heavy. In fact, if we look over the last 2 years, only 3 other players have scored more touchdowns than Addison, who, again, this offense isn't changing. They're still pass heavy. They're still going to be throwing a ton. And Addison is an every down player on the outside working with Jefferson. Um, I will say maybe a healthy TJ Hawkinson throws a wrench in that to a certain degree. Hawkinson, 6.2 targets per game, but had 0 touchdowns last year. That's definitely going to regress in a full season of Hawkinson playing healthy. But I just like the top guys, and then we throw in like the ancillary guys. Jalen Naylor had 6 touchdowns, 51% snap share. I'm not sold he's a difference maker. In fact, I think we could argue the rookie Felton has a chance to take over that role by season's end. This is a guy who set the reception record at Maryland with 96 catches. He's got a 9.20 RAS relative athletic score. Super athletic prospect. Got to them in round 3. I just really like the weapons here. It just makes me even more bullish on McCarthy. I'll tell you now, you can shop around, but his passing yardage mark for the season, 3,400. The Vikings have hit 4,000 passing yards every single year with O'Connell. The only thing that's really a worry for um, the McCarthy hitting that mark would be him suffering injury, but you can make that argument for anybody. Right before we hopped on, I placed a futures bet of McCarthy for comeback player of the year at 9 to 1.
Really.
Yep. I'm gonna post it as soon as we get done recording here.
I'm gonna have to look and see what the Hard Rock has offering there about that. But yeah, man, that's an easy over. 3,400 passing yards.
3,400. Very low.
Man, there we go. We got two futures right there.
There you
Comeback
go,
player of the
team.
year and the over on the passing yards. Look at that. You didn't think if you were listening to this podcast you were gonna get a futures bet, did you? Now you do. You got two. Not one, but two. I love that call right there. With the futures bet. Going back to the pass catchers here, I agree with you, right? Like Justin Jefferson, top five pick in every fantasy draft, in my opinion. You can make a strong case for that. Addison, or what, wide receiver two? No, actually, wide receiver three-ish, like kind of that,
Yeah.
like low, like, yeah, top 20, no, or top 30, top 35. I think
Yeah.
that's fair. Um, I would say more top 36, yeah, like a wide
Yeah.
receiver three.
I'd rather have him a wide receiver three for my
Yeah,
fantasy squad.
he's coming off the board as pulling it up here. Wide receiver 33. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that's a good spot for him there. Um, TJ Hawkinson. All right, let's talk a little bit about him because I wrote him up and then you could correct me if I'm wrong. He's actually right before you could give your thoughts as well. He's actually right behind Laporta for me in the rankings. Like I have him ahead of Kelsey and Andrews, and I know that's maybe a bit aggressive, but when you look at this offense, when you look at, when you take everything into account and you look at what he's done. So 2020 was tied at three. 2021, he was tied at six in PPR points per game. All right. 2022 was tied at three in PPR points per game. 2023, tied at two in PPR points. So he's been a top six tight end in PPR points per game in every year besides last year from 2020. I think his path to doing this again is very, very simple. You mentioned that the offense hasn't changed. I look at this as a situation where the same thing we talked about Laporta, right? Where Laporta was returning from an injury. Hawkinson missed half of a season with an injury, right? Like he returned from the injury midway through the season. And yes, he didn't score touchdowns, but he wasn't, you could tell he wasn't 100%. Like it was pretty obvious. I think he enters the season 100%. I think he's going to be back to form. I like buying the dip here. I think he is someone that I'm going to be invested in this season. Where are you at with Hawkinson? Is he a top five, top 10 tight end for you?
Yeah, top five for sure. Because I think there's really a gap between Laporta, Hawkinson, and then the next wave of guys. Um, because we've seen such consistent returns from Hawkinson. You mentioned the injury and getting him right. He has a full offseason to get that knee right, and I think that'll be a really just a big boost to his overall value. I'm very content drafting him at cost. Don't mind reaching for him a bit if I've got Jefferson already in the queue or already on the squad. I'll throw Hawkinson and McCarthy in the queue. Excited to stack that Vikings team.
Yeah, it's going to the more we talk about this, the more I think it's going to be one of my highest most stacks in DF in best ball this year. Like I really do think that's going to be a stack of mine that I'll be heavily invested in this year. Let's talk about any other pass catchers because I agree with you about Felton. Like I feel like it's better for the offense and for JJ McCarthy than it is for fantasy managers to be drafting Felton. Like I just don't know if the role is going to be consistent on a week to week basis where you can trust him from the fantasy standpoint. Do you agree with that?
No, he would need an injury for that to
Yeah.
take fold, but he
Okay.
has the inside outside ability to play
Yeah.
either spot for Jefferson or for Addison. I will take him with some round 18 swings on squads where I've already got McCarthy. Yeah, I'm fine with him as a late round selection. Just know that he's a dart throw.
Yeah, I agree with that right there. Let's talk about this backfield. We have obviously Aaron Jones, and they added Jordan Mason. They have Ty Chandler. It's pretty deep backfield when you look at it. But I said I was excited about the Mason addition. Now, I am excited about the Mason addition because he's that like really like that thunder running back that's going to complement Jones. I believe that the team just is not content with Ty Chandler. I think this move, tells us that. And I think Mason is going to step into a decent role behind Jones. I think he's a clear-cut handcuff, in my opinion. I think he's going to get some short yardage work. I think he's going to be busy inside the 20, inside the 5, inside the 10, that area. And if Jones, who we do know he has a track record of missing a couple of games. If he's coming off a 317 opportunity season. All right, he had 255 rush attempts, the highest of his career. If he were to miss any time after this high usage season, I think Mason's going to step into a very strong role. And man, he's one of my favorite handcuffs. If we're being honest, talk to me about this backfield.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we talked about the offensive line improvements. I think them being pass heavy just really sets up the run game for success anytime they do switch the run. I'm expecting a big boost in terms of yards before contact per attempt with all the new additions on the offensive line, really just helping the run game as a whole. Aaron Jones entering his age 31 season, he's getting up there for sure. But I think he looked really sharp last year. He averaged 18 opportunities per game, was the RB 20 on a per game basis. And then the 2 year, $20 million contract tells us they still want him to be a consistent part of this offense moving forward. I think he is a great buy at RB 28 pricing. Yeah, I think he jumps into the top 24 with a fantasy finish on a per game basis. But the age is up there for sure. You made some great points there in terms of his career highs and just how often that will generally lead to a down year for an older veteran, especially a guy 31 years old. Then this team brings in one of the best zone runners in Jordan Mason. Um, Elite yards after contact per attempt, elite missed tackles forced, and breakaway. I mean, we've only seen it in limited spots because he's a bit injury prone. But whenever he's been healthy and given a workload that's substantial, very, very productive. Over the last 3 years, PFF has him ranked as the number 3 back in rushing grade on these zone runs. 5.8 yards per carry, 27% first down rate, number 1 among all backs with 100 plus carries over the span and zone attempts. I'm so on board with either grabbing both or one of these guys as part of my draft plan for this year because I think this Vikings team is going to be in the red zone quite a bit. So Jones is a great pick by himself. Mason is a great handcuff, but I'm cool with Mason as a standalone pick as well.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with investing in both of them, like you mentioned, right? Like you're looking at Jones coming off around 7, you're looking at Mason coming off around 9. Like you just that's not early draft capital. Like that's perfect. Like I'm totally fine with securing what could be, you know, one of the better run games in football this upcoming season, right? Like, yeah, I think so, man. I like this a lot. I like investing. I prefer Mason. If we're looking at which one of the two, I prefer investing in Mason. It's just a little bit later. And I do have durability concerns when it comes to Jones. But man, I think you're getting Jones at a very cheap cost here. Like I really do think you're getting him at a cheap cost, and I think a lot of people are somewhat concerned that the addition of Mason is concerning. The durability issues is a definitely a concern. So, but yeah, man, I'm super bullish on this backfield when it comes to just being invested in it. I think Mason is someone that even if I draft, whether I draft Jones or not, I'm going to be targeting Mason in a lot in that ninth round. Um, I just think there's so much upside there to be had when you look at this backfield. So I'm with you there. Anything else here with the Minnesota Vikings that we haven't discussed?
Let's go. Let's go,
Uh,
Vikes.
yeah, let's
Skull.
go. Let's go. We got some future bets for the Vikings. We got a lot of investments in from a fantasy standpoint. So Vikings, ladies and gentlemen, keep an eye out on them for this season. I like it. I'm digging it. I think it's gonna be a good year there in Minnesota. Uh, let's see. Let's see. Maybe we'll win the Minnesota game one day. Go watch a player there. Go watch our guy JJ McCarthy throw the Justin Jefferson. Tyler, like we do each and every episode, let's rank these positional players in their division. So we'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. We'll do the top 4 quarterbacks. We'll do top 5 running backs, top 5 receivers, and then we'll do the top 4 tight ends. Started off with the quarterback position. I think this is a an interesting division because I feel like there's a lot of players kind of clumped in that same tier, similar tiers there. So I'll let you take the quarterback position here first.
All right, I'm gonna go with Caleb Williams at the top, JJ McCarthy, Jared Goff, and then who am I missing?
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love last. Yeah, that's how I would do it.
Man, I am I am stumped. I'm not gonna lie to you, I am stumped. So we'll go with I'm gonna go with Love, Williams, McCarthy, and Goff. But man, they're all very close. Like they're all in that 14 to 20 range for me. Like it's very, very close there. I view them all as QB2s for me. Like these are all guys that I prefer as QB2s this upcoming season. So we got that. All right, let's look at the running back position here in this division. And I'll take this one here. So Jahmyr Gibbs, number one. Um, Josh Jacobs, number two. We have that. We have kind of want to say David Montgomery, number three. Um, Aaron Jones, number four, and then Swift, number
So
five.
Mason just on the outside.
Yeah, yeah, because he's not the starter, right? Like
Yep.
Mason's that very next guy for me. Like I have Mason ahead of Roshan. We like Roshan a lot, but I have Mason ahead of Roshan.
Yeah,
If that makes sense. But I view both of them as really good handcuffs.
I'm with
Um,
you. Top five, same top six. Yeah, with with Mason there at six.
yeah.
Yeah, same grouping.
All right. Now, let's talk receivers here for the NFC North. Let's rank these receivers. Some good ones here in this division.
Yes.
Uh,
Justin Jefferson locked in, number one.
Justin
Amon-Ra St.
Jefferson.
Brown, number two.
I'm with you.
DJ
Um,
Moore. DJ Moore, number three.
yes, DJ Moore, number three.
I might go JMO, number four then.
Yes, I'm with you.
And then maybe a Doomsday. And then maybe Addison. Sorry, Packers. Nobody in the top six.
Yeah, I can't argue that one. No, yeah, I definitely the Packers were not going to be in there for me. Um, so you like Odunze over Addison?
That's a tough one. I think they're the type that are going to be volatile in terms of maybe ping-ponging back and forth. Maybe they're great. So we talked about Addison being a late wide receiver three. Let me see where Odunze is going. Wide receiver three as well. Wide receiver 34. Okay, so yeah, these guys are both where I probably will go with a wide receiver heavy stance at early in my drafts, and these are more likely my wide receiver fours or fives.
Yes.
Um, and I feel comfortable with that.
I'm gonna go with Addison over Odunze by a hair. You got Odunze over Addison. I prefer the quarterback in Minnesota. That's the reason why.
Understood. Fair.
That's the only reason why. But I agree with you both. So they're going as wide receiver threes, but you and I we have very similar draft styles, and I like to be very bullish with receivers early on. So if they end up on my team in round five or six,
Yeah.
they're gonna be my fourth receiver at that point, like almost guaranteed. So I agree with that right there. I like that. All right, let's do tight ends in the NFC North, Tyler. Sam Laporta, Hawkinson, Kraft, and dealer's choice in Chicago, ladies and gentlemen. You can say Loveland, you can say Komet. I say 12% target share or lower for either of the two. So I'm out. So I would go with Laporta, Hawkinson. I think clear cut. I think they're top five tight ends, both of them. I think Kraft, number three, and then the mystery box in Chicago, as you would say.
Yeah. I'll take the upside play in Loveland. Give me the guy with top 10 draft capital.
I agree with that because you know what? Like we already know what we're getting from Komet. And it's just not great. It's not good. Um, Tyler, like you do each and every week, let everyone know where they can follow you, what you got coming up there at fantasyguru.com, the draft guide, all that stuff.
Yeah, we kind of already talked about the draft guide, but you guys know, check us out over at fantasyguru.com. We just launched it on June 1st. Very, very excited for the product there. We'll be continuously adding to it all off season. You guys can catch all my work over there. Tyler Buecher on Twitter slash X, whatever the kids are calling it these days. That's the only social platform I've got.
Yeah, I don't know what they call it nowadays. I still say Twitter, but I'm an old
Same.
ass man. All right, so I don't care. I consider that I'm grandfathered in this bitch, bro. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. All right. I was here before the name changed. So I call it what I want, and that's what we do here. Tyler, as always, bro, I appreciate you jumping on with me, man. I appreciate you breaking down these divisions. I'm having a blast doing this. It's loving this process, and hopefully everyone that's listening is enjoying it too. Remember, you can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. You can follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram threads and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Remember, if you're enjoying the content, you're enjoying the show, make sure you rate, follow, and like the show podcast, wherever there's you're consuming it. We got a ton of content there over at fantasyguru.com. The draft guide is live and kicking. There's going to be new content on that each and every week. So make sure you're checking that out there at fantasyguru.com. For the great Tyler Buecher, I am Armando Marsal. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.